Askreddit Asks professors that have been offered sexual favors by students or students that have offered sexual favors to professors. What happened?
My brother is a professor at a large state school. He was propositioned so many times by students that he and the other 3 professors in their office suite agreed to arrange their office hours so that none of them would ever have to be alone with a student. Female or male. Seriously.
I'm a grad student, in our department. All TAs are required to meet with students publicly in the building's academic center, study lounge area, for this exact reason.
Adjunct in engineering here. Male. Very few female students. Only once. One of them began trying to negotiate a better grade and put out escalating hints that a BJ was on the table. I just smiled, wished her a good day, and kept my boner under the table.
So the BJ went from being on the table to under the table.
Can you give any examples of these escalating hints? It actually happened when I was teaching finance. The young lady asked if there were any non-academic ways to raise her grades, and suggested there were few places she was unwilling to go. I used it as a teaching moment. I suggested that she get a study partner, sign up for tutoring and learn how to do the work. I told her offering up sex for grades would destroy her confidence and self-esteem, but working for, and earning her grade, would help her for the rest of her life.
Good for you and good for her. This is wholesome.
A professor from my university walked into his office to a completely naked freshman girl standing in there with a 6-pack of beer. I don't think she was looking for a better grade or anything. Was just attracted to him. He noped right the fuck out of their edit. For the love of God. People, I don't know what kind of beer it was.
Then he came back, took the 6-pack, and left again.
Short story from someone I used to know. She was struggling in her astronomy class and went into office hours for the professor. She kept making hints and using body language to signal she was DTF. But apparently the professor just kept slowly moving the picture of his family on his desk further towards her until she left.
Damn, that's a smart play.
I guess you can say that she eventually puts on shades. Got the picture.
I was teaching an astronomy class in graduate school when the girlfriend of one of my roommates, both undergrads, offered to orally pleasure me for AB. And the roommate was okay with that. I passed on the offer.
I like to think they had a conversation and a negotiation before presenting you the offer. I bet he would totally give me an if I fucked him. Out of the question. Well, I don't really need an A, I just need a passing grade. Maybe he will pass me if I blow him. Nah, you give great head. That has to be worth a B.
Happened when I taught in grad school. After I had collected the final exam for the semester, one of the most quiet students in the class started chatting me up as I locked up the room. We walked to the library from there and just made small talk. She seemed nice enough, but as I got to the library and put my stuff down, I told her that I needed some privacy to finish grading exams. She straight up tells me that she thinks I'm attractive and would like to hang out. She's bold because we're on the quiet floor of the library and it's packed since it's around finals time. Not wanting to be an ass, and a little shocked, I say sure and give her my number. Long story less long. I tell her we can't hang out until after grades were posted. She aced the class. Didn't need any help from me to do it. Before we could even make it to a first date, we ended up hooking up in my car a few weeks after the semester was over. Told me that she was attracted to me from the very beginning of the semester and worked up the courage to ask me out after the final. Kudos to her.
School excursion. 12th grade, Germany. Most were around 18 by then. That one girl told us that she's about to get her grade up by fucking the teacher who was with us and went over to his room. 5 minutes later, that teacher came knocking on our door, the room where most of us were just having a small party drinking and smoking pot, and we all panicked. After about 10 seconds we had hidden most of the harder stuff and opened the door to see our teacher entering with a bottle of whiskey in his hand. No booze here? Question mark. Question mark. I thought you're having a party? After 15 minutes and about a quarter of that bottle, he left us again and told us to have an eye on that girl, because she will surely not be happy with the grade he will give her. And that trying to fuck him wouldn't make it any better. It took us a long while to understand that he came over to make sure we all learn about that story and give him an alibi.
I know my mom banged a professor in college. Ta-da. Here I am! Exclamation mark.
Right on.
She wanted an A but got an A+.
So, you're like, wicked smart, then?
My man.
Not me but a professor friend of mine. Was older guy in late 40s teaching a business MBA class. Student in her late 30s gives him a card after exam grades were in saying she has liked him all semester and would like to go out with him. That was like 11 years ago. They have been happily married for 9 years now.
That's pretty wholesome. Also professional. I see nothing wrong with asking out a professor after the semester is over. Assuming you don't need to take any additional classes with them.
Finally something wholesome and appropriate on this post.
Back in high school I saw a girl I knew walking around drunk in the middle of a shopping center, so I offered her a ride home. We had a math class together and she asked me if I thought our teacher was weird. I didn't think he was. She then told me how he lent her lunch money one day and to pay him back she tried to fuck him. But he turned her down. For something as little as lunch money. It shook her that he turned her down. I then had to turn her down in exchange for the ride home. Now she probably thinks I'm weird.
Not quite the same, but 13 years ago, whilst I was teaching at university, I ogled a girl after finding out she was into Stargate. A month later I was teaching her. A year later, when I wasn't teaching her, we met at a party and ended up hooking up. We've been together for almost 12 years. Married 5, and have a son.
Whoa, this took a turn.
Well, that escalated slowly.
My friend is an adjunct professor of psychology and very gay. He would tell me of at least 3 freshman girls a year who would offer to do anything for a better grade. He would recommend better studying habits.
Well yeah, if he's very gay and they still offer. They obviously didn't study him very much.
I always wonder if it ever happened that 2 guys hooked up on Grindr and later on realized they're a professor and a college student in a new class. Not to me, but to my father. He was having a meeting with a student in his lab. And his colleague was working across the room. The student was coming on hard to him and he was doing his absent-minded professor thing and didn't really notice what she was up to. The colleague was apparently just killing himself at my dad's refusal to notice what was going on. He, the colleague, proceeded to tell that story at most every faculty party. Which is how I heard it. My dad asked my mum out literally the day after he taught her the final class of the semester. They've been married for 28 years. Edit. I guess I should clarify that my mum was 23 or so and my dad is 10 years older than her. They've always felt like they had a pretty normal, boring relationship to me. Lots of couples meet in strange ways. And I don't think the way they met affected their long-term relationship in any significant way.
You know what's kept them together all those years? Super kinky student-teacher roleplay. Imagine it.
I had an English professor that would make every class write an essay on whether or not it was morally okay for a college professor to date a student. The hot girls that said they were okay with it, he'd ask them out.
They'll never catch me. English professor, probably.
I was an adjunct instructor at a small regional college and a female student had tried multiple times to get on my good side for a better grade. First she brought in donuts, then pizza, and finally one day she stayed late after class and suggestively asked if there were other ways she could improve her grades. Being a socially inept male, it took a little bit for that to sink in, but once I got the idea I kindly asked her to leave. She did and I thought that was that. Except it wasn't. Turns out she reported me for sexual harassment. Nothing ever came of it however since she ended up getting into trouble, drugs I think, and dropped out of school. Even still it was a very scary moment for me and factored into my decision to leave teaching and pick a different career.
My dad was my mom's statistics professor in college. So I guess I happened. Me and my brother constantly give her shit for getting an easier.
She got the D.
That's fucking hilarious. Face with tears of joy, son. Do your homework. Shut up. Mom, not everyone can get an easier. Quote.
I was the network admin at a approximately 3,500 student university and had a girl ask me a couple of obviously leading questions about how the grading software worked, and if I had access to it, I did, but changes were audited, then lean in close to whisper in my ear. Being careful to drag her breast against my arm as she did so. That she would doanything. I wanted if I would give her a B in a class she needed to graduate that spring. I also had an aunt offer me what she thought was the amazingly large sum of $500 if I would fabric a complete degree for the son of some church friend of her. The amazing thing is that 2 professors and 1 academic support staff lost their jobs trying to do the same thing sorts of stuff for students while I was there.
In grad school, they paid for all my expenses in exchange for me to teach public speaking to undergrads. I was technically a TA, but I was the sole teacher in the classroom and the only one to do the grading, lecturing, etc. I was also only 1 to 4 years older than most of my students. So I was prepared for lots of inappropriate comments and suggestions. Surprisingly, though, most of my students treated me with utmost respect. Except, of course, for a few of them, when a kid didn't show to classes the first 4 weeks of the semester, and he'd already missed drop deadline, I wrote him a final email telling him he'd failed and could still withdraw. The next day, I met him for the first time coming out of my office. He tried to follow me home, telling me he'd love to show me his oral presentation skills. That I'd know he doesn't have to take the class once I see what this tongue can do. Instead of walking home, I walked him over to the dean's office and left him there to negotiate, telling him another TA might pick him up, but if he comes within 50 feet of me again I'd have to call security. The worst case though was this kid who was just infatuated. He started bringing me food and coffee each morning, staying after class to ask how I was doing, and dropping in for office hours 2x a week. He started messaging me on Facebook, but since my profile settings were private, I wasn't actually getting the notifications. He'd been messaging me really graphic things for a month, and I didn't see them until shortly after midterms. I brought my computer into the dean, and asked that he be removed from my course. He was, and the communication stopped. Strangely enough, the following semester, I had a stalker who'd leave notes on my door, whisper into my open bedroom windows, and ended up breaking into my car and writing I3U on the windshield with blood. They never caught the guy, but I always wondered if it was the same student.
Make out WA person at a dance party. 4 days later I walk into my new semester class. She was the professor. We were both a little surprised.
Nice see.
This is a true story. I was an assistant professor doing a postdoc. One semester there was a girl in one of my classes who came to my office hours a lot. Not super attractive but not ugly. She seemed to like me. One day she made a comment about trading grades for sex and added, "You should think about it. Because people do this and I really want an A." I said, "That's nice but I'd really like to keep my job." And she replied, "But you're leaving at the end of the year anyway." I didn't know what to say and changed the subject. The whole thing was really awkward. Edit. So many people grandly claiming that assistant professor and postdoc are mutually exclusive. Jesus. I've worked in academia for 30 years. Maybe people use terminology differently in other fields. In my area, a postdoctoral position is a temporary position, usually 2 or 3 years, usually with a high teaching load, and usually carrying the title assistant professor. There are such things as postdoctoral fellowships with little or no teaching. But in my field those are quite rare. Edit 2. Fucking morons continue to tell me that my use of the word postdoc is improper. Oh, URL redacted, page, what underscore is underscore or underscore postdoc, a postdoctoral scholar. Postdoc is an individual holding a doctoral degree who is engaged in a temporary period of mentored research and or scholarly training for the purpose of acquiring the professional skills needed to pursue a career path of his or her choosing. Thank you.
Till English lit professors are dirty AF.
I think it's because they are the romantics. Edit. I'm torn wanting to show my English teacher wife my modest success. knowing that then I get to explain why I was on this post. Edit 2. I am not the English teacher. Please forgive the poor English.
Not involved in the story, but the principal at my high school is married and has a kid with a woman he taught in freshman year. Edit. Looking at the replies. I guess this happens a lot. Edit 2. The same guy fired another teacher because he took one of the teacher, female students home after practice one day. Edit 3. Fuck you, King Raj 4826.
A friend in high school openly told us all in the cafeteria that his goal for the year was to sleep with Mrs. P. By God he did it. She was smoking hot 10 out of 10. He went back to her place after prom and she had to resign. They dated for a few years off and on. Then married with a couple kids now.
Hey kids, wanna know how I met your mother? That guy's name, Emmanuel Macron.
I had a biostats professor who consistently gave this one attractive blonde high grades despite her average performance on exams. 2 other male classmates caught wind of this and confronted the professor. He denied any wrongdoing and even convened a class-wide meeting to address the accusation. 5 years later, he was arrested and convicted of sexual assault. He apparently groped a female student in his office.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to support the channel, and above all, have an excellent day, you incredible people.